I never met that guy before.
Well, Bob Jones, nice to meet you.
I don't know the lady in red.
I'm Val Hornsberg, I'm the clerk of court.
Okay. We've met.
All right.
I'm the new guy around here, but don't hold that against me. So I got the short straw, so I'm gonna do most of the question asking, but hopefully others will chime in as we get
One
going.
thing I want to say up front and early,
Go ahead.
when I started my career, fresh out of high school, my first job was in a steel mill, where hearing protection was a hard hat. The noise level was like being inside a thunderstorm. I then went on later to play with things that go boom a whole lot. So my hearing is not the world's best.
Okay.
I may be saying, what, could you repeat that? It's because of, I don't hear well.
What did you say?
Sometimes that's a blessing.
Well, I've had some of that in my life too, so I'll speak up.
What?
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with, have you filed to run as well, or are you just applying for the 1-year appointment?
I thought I'd just try the 1-year appointment. Right now, we really need to get over that hump and get things going. And that's my current focus at the moment.
Okay, so you're not planning on running for the 6-year deal? Is the deadline passed?
No.
No, it's Monday at 5.
Oh, so you gotta decide by Monday.
No.
A lot's going to depend on what happens here today.
And so the decision, I don't think there'll be a decision before next week because there's a Monday night public forum.
I know that.
And then the commissioners have to decide. We're gonna recommend, but the 2 commissioners have to figure out what they're doing, so, okay. So what about this opportunity excites you? Why are you running? What are you running? Why are you applying? And what do you hope to accomplish as county commissioner?
First of all, have you read my letter?
Yes.
Okay, let me go beyond that. When I was growing up, folks of my generation and the area that I grew up in were told that we had 2 main responsibilities. One was to make a difference. Whatever we did, make a difference, make a positive difference. And number 2, to help other people. My whole career has been oriented in that direction, with working with other people, trying to make a difference, trying to improve the organizations that I was a part of. I'm very, very sincerely a believer in organizational development. What is organizational development? It's improving the organization from within. There's so much talent, there's so much capability there within our organizations, and capturing that and improving on what we're doing, is a whole lot of work and a whole lot of fun. And it feels really, really good when you get something done. If you take a look at some of the things that I've done there are 3 things that I really feel strongly about, that I'm really proud of. First is what I did with the governor's office, with the Commonwealth Management Training Program. First of all, a peon, someone not at the agency secretary level, does not write management directives for the state of Pennsylvania. I did, I wrote 3 of them. It took me a while to put these things together because they're highly complex. There's a lot of work there to design the training programs that were actually going to increase the level of capability and the level of expediency, experience, productivity, all those things among the top 2,500 managers in Pennsylvania. Now that was there, that was then. This is here, this is now. But some of the same things continue to apply. What we did in there, we had to work with all of the agencies. There were 41 different agencies, large agencies under the governor's jurisdiction. So I'm not out there doing anything on my own. This is a great way to fail. There are about 300 smaller agencies and commissions under the governor's jurisdiction. Putting the program together I met with all 41 agencies, training directors, and the training directors from the smaller agencies. Basically said, look, we want to improve the quality of management here in Pennsylvania. How do we do this? You know, what do we do? What do we look at? And they said, duh. So what we did is we sent out, for the first time in the history of Pennsylvania, a written training needs analysis. At each of the 3 different levels, the executive level, the senior level, and the middle level got a different version. So after getting that information back and processing it, now we had a pretty good idea of what the needs were. Go back to the agencies and say, how does this fit? You know, we've got this body of information. Does it fit what you see in your agency? And then we sat down and said, how can we make this happen? What should the elements in the curriculum be? There are 3 different curricula because there are 3 different levels involved here. We call the executive level, that's the agency head and deputy secretary. Internally, we call those folks the temporary help because they're going to be in office for 4, maybe 8 years at most. And then they're gone and somebody else is coming in. Every time we have a change in leadership in Pennsylvania's government, the agency heads change as well. So we know that they're temporary. But even though they're temporary, it's their job to manage the organization while they're there. So we've got to give them the tools to do this, which is why we have the executive level curriculum. Now, taking a look at the senior managers, they're the ones who really operate the organization. They're the ones who are in charge on a day-to-day basis, like the undersheriff. You go to a lot of meetings, but who does the actual scheduling, the actual laying out of the work, the planning? The undersheriff has a lot to do with that. Senior managers actually ran the agencies in Pennsylvania. So we had to give them the tools to do that currently, and do that as well as it could be done. Now, the middle managers are the managers of the future. So we needed to give them the tools to bring them along. If you look very carefully at that management directive, the 3 of them that I wrote, you really, really tear them apart. You're going to see that there is one course that applies in all 3 curricula, that appears in all 3 curricula, and that's decision making. That's critical. We taught a process of decision making in that program that was immediately internalized. You didn't buy anything in Pennsylvania that cost over $5,000 without doing a decision profile the way we taught it. You didn't resolve a problem unless you followed the process. And you didn't anticipate and plan for potential problems unless you went through the process that we taught. There are 3 different types of decisions. The first, flat-out decision, occurs in the current time right now. It's a choice among alternatives. A problem, what do we define a problem as? A problem is a deviation from the norm with cause unknown. You know, something different, we don't know why it happened, but it already happened. So there's that time factor, it's already there. Potential problem analysis, we're looking at what could go on in the future. And how do we prevent those things from occurring? 3 different processes. In all 3 cases, we had a post-course application, a PCA. You didn't get credit for these mandatory courses just by sitting there and listening to my fantastic words or somebody else's great voice. It's one of my beliefs that I want to see what you do with what you're taught. So we had a post-course application where within 3 months of when you took the course, you had to go back to your particular job and apply that particular course to some facet, something you were doing on your job. Document it the way we taught you to in the courses. Now here's where it gets interesting. And have your manager review it and sign off on it, approve it. Once that was done, these PCAs, post-course applications, went to the agency level for the agency's review and approval, and then they came into me. One of the things that you have to look at in government is when you're budgeting, what we have to look at is what we're getting for our money. Well, by going through this post-course application process, I could prove what was happening in Pennsylvania, how the organizations were changing, how we were saving money. And it's not my word, no. Here's, it's coming from the folks who are in the program, it's validated, it's signed by their supervisor, it's reality. It's not BS coming out of anywhere. That's the first area that I'm really proud of. We changed Pennsylvania's management. When I joined the governor's office, we had 138,000 employees at a 3.5% tax rate, state tax rate. When I left, this is not all my work by any means, but I had a piece of it, a small piece. We had 98,000 employees, not 138,000. And the state tax rate went to 2%.
So you went down 40,000 employees and a percent.
And because we went down 40,000 employees, we didn't need the taxes to pay for these 40,000 employees. What happened to their productivity? You cut 40,000 people out, what happens to what gets done? It went up. It went up. One of the reasons that it went up is we incorporated something that was pretty new at that time in state government. Let me show you how it works. Are you doing a good job?
What's that?
Are you doing a good job?
I think so.
Prove it. What are you supposed to be doing? I want to see a position description that says, as the sheriff, these are the things that I should be doing. I want to see a percentage breakdown of your guess as to how much time you spend. Out of 100%, 40% goes here, 20% goes there, 10%. I want to see that written up by you, not by me, by you. That's the first thing, so I know what you're doing. The second thing that I want to see is a set of performance standards that tell me how well you should be doing each of those things. Where's that going to come from? That's going to come from you. Because when it comes annual evaluation time, I'm going to pull both of those documents out, and I'm going to say, okay, Wynn, here's what you were supposed to be doing, what you actually do. Here's how well you should be doing these things, what you actually do. Now you just proved that you were doing a good job, or not. And if you give me that information, then I have the ability to do a number of things. Number one, in the real world, you're not promotable. But in the real world, where we do have folks who are promotable, you promote your best people. How do you know who they are? Now we know. What do you do with the folks who are at the other end of the scale? Well, now we know where they're missing. They're not missing everything, but there are gaps in their performance, gaps in their knowledge, and we can provide the training to fill those gaps in. What happens if we provide that training and they're still not making it? Now we have a basis to move them on to someone else. And it's defensible. This is not just because we don't like the shirt that Franklin is wearing today, or the one that I'm wearing, or, it's factual, okay? We did these things. Second area, what I did with Pennsylvania's police commission, municipal police commission. I joined the police commission right after there was a change in the statutory requirements for the training of Pennsylvania's police officers. As of December of 1990, and I joined the commission in May, there was a statutory mandate that every year from that year on, beginning in 91, there would be a minimum of 12 hours of classroom training, that it was job applicable for the currently serving officers throughout the state. Now, Pennsylvania's a big state. We've got police officers, we've got law enforcement personnel working for the city of Philadelphia. And there are about 7,000 sworn officers there. At the time, Pittsburgh had about 1,000 sworn officers. Erie had about 600, different cities had different amounts. And then you get to the counties, we call them the upper tier, you call them Highline here, that border New York State, the ones that border Canada here. And we found that a lot of times there, the townships, the municipalities, had a part-time officer that was working 20 hours a month and driving his own vehicle. So there's a vast difference between a full-time law enforcement officer working in the city of Philadelphia and a guy up in God's country working 20 hours a month, right? Not entirely. Law enforcement is law enforcement, no matter where you go. There are a lot of similarities in those positions, and there are differences. What we did is we looked for the similarities, and we established a core of courses. One of my greatest legacies, and I'm extremely proud of this, is that from the very first year on, including today, and every year since I started, there is one of those mandatory courses called Legal Update. Why is that course there? I started it, it's one of my legacies. It's one of my values that if you're a law enforcement officer, maybe you ought to know the law you're enforcing. So that course every year will consist and has consisted of changes in Pennsylvania's criminal code, changes in Pennsylvania's vehicle code, changes that affect the cop on the street, the average cop on the street, coming out of the U.S. Supreme Court or Pennsylvania Supreme. Any new law enforcement programs like the Amber Alert program, when that first came out, that was included in there. And also changes in the law of search and seizure. And that was a tough one because search and seizure changes almost weekly. But we tried to update that at 2 or 3 times, at least throughout the year. So that's one of my legacies. Again, with this course, you don't get credit by just sitting there and listening to the nice dulcet tones of the instructor. You had to pass a written test. You had 3 shots at this. You take the course, you take the test, you blow it, come back, take the course again. You take the course the second time, you fail the test the second time, come back, take the course the third time. After the third time, if you still haven't passed, give me your badge. It's the way it works. If you can't pass the course after 3 attempts, you're out. There's no prejudice. You can go somewhere else and get a job in law enforcement somewhere else and meet their requirements. It's just that you're done in Pennsylvania. So that's something that I'm really proud of, to get that done. To make that happen, I met with a lot of really, really good attorneys. And yeah, I know some really good attorney jokes that I won't bring out here. One of my best folks was the Executive Deputy Attorney General for the state of Pennsylvania. Rick was with me, for 12 years. I had a deputy attorney for Allegheny County that was with me about 10 years. I had a number of folks in that time period, 1990 to 2003, were private sector attorneys that were making at that time $600–750 an hour. These were really good people. And the attorneys, the Bar Association, really thought this was something to get included in this group because there was a direct impact every year on law enforcement coming out of these guys. So that was really good. How did I pay these guys? No way did I have the money to pay their hourly rate. We had the information base from them. We had them advertised as being part of the team that put this course together. And we also gave them a sports jacket, kind of like the Masters. You want to talk about something that just screams status? That worked. You know, we give them a $125 sports coat, it's got a nice logo on it, and I get $6,000 worth of work out of them. Good deal. Okay? And these folks also help train the instructors that put on the actual courses. I have a big mouth, but I can't train everybody in Pennsylvania. There's 27,000 officers then. I needed about 120 instructors to do that, so we used the course development committee to teach the instructors how to teach the legal update course. Same process on all the other courses. Then it was my responsibility to do ongoing quality control, to make sure that the guys actually taught what they were supposed to be teaching. So it gave me an opportunity to show up in Podunk, some other places, at 3 o'clock in the morning. You'd never expect to see somebody from headquarters at 3 o'clock in the morning walking into your class. I'd do that. That way I would know what you were actually doing. And I could make a pretty good assessment of how good the instructors were. If you were doing a great job, pat you high on the back. If you weren't doing a very good job, well, then the pat on the back wouldn't be quite so high. The third area that I'm getting into now, you know, when I retired, I thought I was done with all this kind of stuff. I'm now the Red Cross guy for Broadwater and Morrow counties. Been that for, the last 8 years, 9 years. I'm in charge of disaster services for the Red Cross. Whenever we have a disaster, I'm the guy who gets the call to go out and help the folks. Our focus is recovery, getting the folks back and functioning again. And I'm very happy with how that's gone. Another major function that we're doing right now is the smoke alarm project. We have put up around 325 smoke alarms in houses all over the county so far. This is a program that we started last April, and we're going to finish it by the end of May of this year. I had a little bit of, I'm taking a little bit of the credit for that, but the real heroes are the folks who were doing the work. The folks who were doing the work are the rural fire folks, the firefighters, and also the City of Townsend firefighters. Those folks have come out and have helped us, and they have worked very, very hard to get these installations done. What's the payoff so far? 325 smoke alarms installed, roughly 3 per home. We protected, if you do the math, how many families? 325 divided by 3. Families that were not protected before that are now. How did I do this? By working with the fire departments. We started it out following the process that Red Cross National Headquarters insisted that we follow. It wasn't working too well. So we sat down and we did an after-action discussion every time. What worked well, what didn't, how do we fix it, where are we going next, when are we going next? And it was my job to get the materials to do the supply. And we're coming along quite well. As I said, we'll be finishing Broadwater County by the end of May of this year. And last Saturday, we just started the same program in Morrow County, where we installed 63 smoke alarms in houses in White Sulphur. And there's an additional 15 families that have called and signed up for this smoke alarm installation in their homes. Again, in the city of White Sulphur. So I like to make these things happen. Okay?
Good.
Question?
Well, I've abandoned all hope of getting through all of our questions, since that was the first question. So what I'm gonna do, I'll ask you one more sort of personal question, and then I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions specifically about the current county commission.
Should I say I refuse to answer?
Yes, you may. Tell us about a mistake you've made professionally, what you learned from it, and how you fixed it, or
I knew that was coming. After being in the governor's office for 12 years and working, developing the Commonwealth's management training program, after 12 years of this, I've heard all the arguments, pro, con, in between, up, down, back, forth. I've heard them all 3 or 4 times. I was starting to burn out. I needed something else to do. And if you look, you can see 3 different management directives. I didn't just walk away from this program. I made sure that it stayed there. But what I did is, I went to work for a friend of mine who was the Secretary of Banking. She had this really great idea. She wanted to improve the level of knowledge of the people of Pennsylvania about banking. Back then, there were some new things that were just coming down the pike. This is gonna sound like ancient history, but I have a lot of gray hair. One of the new things coming down the pike was the ATM machines. These were fresh out, nobody knew what to do. So Sally Hargrove, the Secretary of Banking, said, Don, can you come over here and start this from scratch? You know, and put together some programs and go out and tell the folks in Pennsylvania more about banking and improve their level of knowledge so they know more about the banking process and how it all works. Okay. I didn't think too awful hard about that because I was looking at getting out of the governor's office, looking for something different. I never worked for a banking institution. This was all brand new to me. So how did I do? What did I do? I sat down with the experts, with the bank examiners, the folks who go out and evaluate the banks. And I said, what do folks need to know about banking? They gave me their pitch. And then I went and talked with the consumer problem division folks, the ones who got the calls from the public whenever they had a problem. And I would say, what are the top 10 things that people call you about? They gave me a list of not quite 10. So I took all this together, I sat down with Sally and I said, okay, boss, you know, here's what I found out so far in terms of topical areas. Which ones do you think we ought to do? And we picked 10 topical areas. Here's where I started to screw up. One of those areas was in terms of savings accounts. How do you manage your savings account? Put together a 45-minute program on that. And I ran the program. I developed a lot of PowerPoint stuff, so I was locked into the content. And I also took a bank examiner, chief bank examiner, out with me every time I did one of these presentations to make sure that the quality was there. If somebody asked a question, I would give him the question to answer. But let me tell you what happened. I'd go out to a senior citizen center, and I'd ask folks there, how many of you have savings accounts? How many hands are up? How many of you have savings accounts? Tell me. Good. And I would ask the folks, how many of you have savings accounts that you started back about the time you got married? And this was 1950 or so for most of the folks. Get the hands up there. And I would say, how would you like to double, at least, the return that you're getting on your checking account, savings account, with no risk whatsoever? Absolutely not. How do you do this? It's real simple. At that time, new savings accounts were paying 2.5%. You can figure this one out. I told the folks to go into their bank and tell the folks there at the bank that they wanted to close their old savings account and immediately transfer that money into a new savings account at today's rate. So we're going from 0.25%, which is what these accounts started at, to 2%, 4 times as much money. For the consumer, is this a good thing? Pennsylvania's Department of Banking is not funded out of the common fund, out of the state taxes. Pennsylvania's Department of Banking is funded by bills that were sent out to each of the banks that they supervise. A couple of days after I show up at this senior citizen center, Some of the folks walk into their local bank and they say, we're gonna check out what this guy from Harrisburg said. And they go in there and close out this old account at 0.25%, get a new account at 2%, and they're happy as can be. They come back, they tell the other folks at the senior centers, and now we got 20 people going into the bank and doing this. Shortly after that, the president of the bank would call Sally Hargrove, my boss, and say words to the effect of, what's this guy doing out here? He's costing us money. He's costing us big money. Okay. Did another program on checking accounts. You all have checking accounts. You all know that you're supposed to rectify that account frequently. I mean, add up all the debits, add up all the assets that you put in there, all the deposits. Make sure that you're well on the plus side. Well, that has happened to me. Sometimes, especially when you're starting out, you'll get two checking account books, two books of checks for the same checking account. Or I would have a checkbook and my wife would have a checkbook. And I would write the checks out for the bills that I had to deal with. She would write the checks out for the bills that she had to deal with. Only problem being that we never sat down and reconciled all the checks that we wrote out. What happens very quickly is we're writing NSF, non-sufficient funds checks. What happens if you write an NSF check in Pennsylvania? I don't know the rules here. In Pennsylvania, the bank could post that check 3 times a day against your account because you might have showed up and made a deposit. And if you haven't done that, they can charge you the NSF fund, an NSF fee of $30 for each time. They would do that for 3 days in a row. When would you find out about this? When you got your next bank statement at the end of the month. You know how much money folks can end up paying in NSF fees? Hundreds of dollars, very easily. And we would talk about this, and I would say, now here's the number to call in Harrisburg whenever this happens. Call these consumer folks, and they will work with you. They'll call the bank and try to talk the bank into getting rid of all but one fee. Okay, what happens? People listen to what I have to say, they call our consumer folks call the banks, talk the banks into lowering the NSF funds. This happens enough times, the bank president calls my boss. In the 22 months that I worked there, I developed 10 different programs, did 220 different seminars before Sally realized that she was not making the bank presidents happy with this. So you were asking me something that I did that was wrong? I did the job too well. Too well. Right after that, the major in charge of the police commission in Pennsylvania called and asked me if I'd be willing to help him with his little problem with training the municipal police across the state. So I left banking and went back to law enforcement, my original law. And I think I did pretty well there.
Okay, we have 10 minutes left. So I'll ask you the question, kind of a scope of question, and you can just go from there. And specifically dealing with this county commission, if I'm sure you've observed some things. So right now, there's a situation where we have 2 commissioners instead of 3, which is why you're here. We have 2 commissioners who often disagree. Say again?
Louder?
Okay. We have 2 commissioners
Yes.
who often disagree with each other.
Yes.
There are a number of issues that are a 1-1 vote, or where we don't get to a decision either up or down. I guess that makes it a down decision if you can't get 2 votes. There's often meetings where there's arguments and contentious environment that many people complain about, whether county employees or residents. So number one, how would you come into this environment and address it? And number two, what do you see in the operation of the county government that you think is going well, you'd like to improve, or like to sustain, things that you'd like to improve? And I guess specifically, if you have time to address it, the county budgeting process.
Let me deal with number one first. I happen to know both of these folks. And it's my firm belief that both of these folks want to do what's best for the county. That's my belief. Now, there's an elephant in the room. And I think I know what the elephant is. One of the things, without discussing that, one of the things that needs to be done, perhaps, here in the county. Let me give you an example from back in Pennsylvania. Back in Pennsylvania, we have quite a number of counties, and in each of those counties, we have a highway superintendent. Let's say, for instance, that the highway superintendent in County A, nice day like today, is out working to repave a piece of the highway. Putting asphalt down, doing a pretty good job. If somebody drives by this person's house and sees a brand new asphalt driveway, drops a dime and says, hey, something's going on here. What do? In Pennsylvania, what we do is we gather the facts. We take somebody who's a little higher up the chain of command, and we send them out to find out what's going on. Is there a brand new driveway? Or was the dime that was dropped nothing? If there is a brand new driveway, we would meet with the superintendent of this particular county and say, what happened? If the superintendent of that county could come in and show us a bill from a different paving company than the one he's been working on this road with over here, to get the work done, and he's paid the bill, what's the problem? There's no problem. It was done legitimately, okay? On the other hand, if the person waffles and tries to feed us a line of whatever you want to call it, then we take the situation and we turn the situation over to law enforcement to deal with. And we immediately, as of that moment, we turn it over to law enforcement, we suspend the individual without pay and without benefits until the situation is resolved one way or the other. If it turns out that the individual is innocent, we'll reinstate the person with full back pay and full benefits. We had it wrong, folks, come on back into the fold. We want you here. If on the other hand, the individual took things into his own hands inappropriately, why should we pay this individual his salary and benefits after this malfeasance? I can't see that. So that's two ways two instances of having a good disciplinary policy. That's something I think this county needs to have put into strong effect. There may be a disciplinary policy, but we need to put it into effect among the three commissioners. The commissioners should all have a look at the data before the decision is made to either reinstate Wynn with full back pay and benefits or call in law enforcement on what Wynn is doing. It's a matter of all three of the people of the county here have decided that's the form of government they want, is three commissioners. So let's get the three commissioners working together. I think it's possible. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But for myself, one of the things I would do, and you can write this in rock, is I would be looking for as much information from both of them as possible on any of the issues, because both of these folks have a wealth of information. And I want that. I want to know that, so I can make the best possible decision. I may agree with one, disagree with the other, I may get confused, I may see a third option. There's all kinds of things out there that could happen. But the three commissioners need to work together to make the decision in the county. The second part of your question, what I would like to see done, I mentioned that earlier with respect to position descriptions, with respect to performance standards. It's a way of taking a look at what the folks should be doing so they can answer the question, you know, how come you think you're doing a good job? What's the sidebar benefit of this? The sidebar benefit is we're going to have folks who are proud of what they're doing because they know what the job is, they know what the expectations are, and you know what? Most of the time they're going to do just a little bit better than that. Is that wrong? I don't think so. I think that's good for the individuals, it's good for the county organization, and it's good for the taxpayers of the county.
County budget, any idea on how we're doing financially or places that you think we either are neglecting or overspending? Kind of what's your this thought process going through that?
What budget process is used here? What budget formulation process is used? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the new guy. We do an annual budget process that begins in the spring.
What-
Our
what-
fiscal
okay.
year is June
Let me give
30th.
you a specific. Is it a zero-based budget process? So you're looking at prior years and comparing prior with future? Okay.
It's
If you're doing that, you've probably got some standard add-ins. One of the things that we used in that process was we used a 5% per annum increase in salary and wages. We used a 42% Benny rate to come up with our 100 series monies. We would take a look at what it cost us last year for the hard assets, for the buildings. We would take a look at what the known repair and maintenance costs were gonna be for that. We would take a look at the mobile assets, the vehicles, those things. Are they in good shape? Do we need to replace some? What's the current rate on that? We would try to put this together, and we would look for input from each of the area professional managers for the road crews. Talk to Dana. You know, what are your needs? Are you looking at needing a new truck? How soon? How could we possibly get this truck? You know, is there a way for us to get a Fed surplus truck? There's a lot of Fed surplus trucks out there, very reasonable, that have a lot of good uses left on them. What about the road graders? Again, we're gonna need additional road graders. You know, this county has over 3,000 named roads. Now, some of them may be only little tiny things that are personal or private roads, but the road crew, their job is immense in this county. And that's it has to be a big chunk of the budget.
Do you have any interest in moving to a performance-based budgeting or zero-based budgeting? Does that make sense in a county like this?
I have a personal interest in working with a budgeting system that functions here. Doesn't have to be zero-based. It has to be one that works in this system. I've been to a lot of training courses over the years, and even recently. I can learn this. It's not hard to figure out the budgeting process. What's more difficult is the fiscal management. How do you control that money? And I did something different back in my Commonwealth management training days. One of the things that supposedly you ain't supposed to do in government is to augment your budget, to add money to your budget during the fiscal year. But I figured out a way to do it. And if you look at the management directives, in all cases, the ones that I wrote, called for the provision for interagency billing for tuition costs. So if we had a need to do something outside the basic core curricula, this specialized area, I could put that course on and charge my costs back to the agencies. So I didn't have to worry about exceeding my budget. Is that concept transferable here? I don't know, you tell me. Talk to the agency folks, talk to the managers that are in charge of each of the functional areas, and ask them for their ideas. They're smart people. They've been doing this for a while. Who are the experts? The folks that are actually doing the jobs. How to find out how to do the job better? Ask them. Don't go read a book somewhere, because the book was written for that somewhere else. It's not written for here.
Well, anybody have any other questions? We got about 2 minutes here to wrap up.
Well, the only one we've asked everybody else is the time commitment. What kind of time would you be able to put into being a county commissioner, or what?
That's something
the
I'm
process?
pretty good at managing. Throughout my life, from about 1973 on, I managed to work 2 jobs at the same time. A full-time job with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In 1973, I started my own electronics business, where I was installing stereos, aftermarket stereos in cars. I was hanging CB radios for folks who just had to have that particular capability. Then I went on a little further, and when I got into my 40s, what do a lot of guys do when they turn 40? Or a mistress, or they get a sports car. You know, I gotta be a little different here. You know, I kicked the bucket and I bought a farm. Okay, now if any of you are farmer ranchers, you know how much work that is. So I had a full-time farm that I managed myself. I had one hand that would come over and help me, and the rest of it was, you know, by God and by golly, get the job done. And I did. And I'm really, really glad that I had that farm. I learned so much. And I had the best pork, the best beef I've ever had in my life. Had my own grain crops. A mistake that I made one year, that you asked about mistakes, is I had this really great idea about putting in a sweet corn crop. So I established a little 5-acre piece, and I worked the ground up really well, got it nice and smooth as could be. Put in 3 different types of sweet corn on 3 different dates that had 3 different maturation dates. Okay? They all ripen at the same time. What do you do with 5 acres of sweet corn? I mean, in the morning, I'd go out and I'd pick a couple 100-pound feed bags full of this corn, stick it in my truck, go to work, and try to find somebody's car that wasn't locked.
Give them a gift.
Or somebody else that wanted some sweet corn. So, you know, sometimes I have the best intentions, and sometimes things turn out too good. Other times, I've had some interesting experiences on the farm where things were supposed to turn out well and didn't. But that's farming. So, you know, farming is the biggest gamble in the world.
Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it very
Thank you.
much. I think Laura has some information on Monday night to give you.
This is just a rundown of how the forum will work. Mayor Mike Evans is the moderator, and you'll have 3 minutes for an introductory speech. And then from there, it'll be just Q&A, really mostly from the public. And Mike will probably have some questions from folks who don't want to stand up and speak publicly.
Okay. So let me ask a question of you. You know the rules. Should I decide over the weekend to go ahead and file for the commissioner position this fall, what do I have to do?
Come into my office, get an application.
That's gonna cost me some money.
Yeah, there is, and I don't have the number in my head right now.
It's a percentage of the salary. It's not.
$192.
$192.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Yeah, it's like 191 and some change.
It's not gonna break me. Should I do this?
It's up to you.
Yeah, that's your call.
I had to try, right? I had to try. Okay. Any other questions that any of you have?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
See what the public, wants to know from everybody Monday night, and then, it'll be in their hands. From there.
Okay. I'm gonna slide back here and sit back for a little bit. My next meeting is at 5:30.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
Thanks,
Well,
Tom.
thanks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna see if Mr. Shipman's here.